Mr. Stevens, anything you want to, on this part of the session, anything else to add? Okay, Ms. Messer.
Okay, well, that brings us to next steps to wrap this up. And so I was going to just run through very quickly, high level, what we're looking at for the next 5.5 months.
That would be good.
Okay.
And if you want us to look at one of your timetable charts, tell us which one and where to find it.
Probably the best one is going to be under 7A, page 3.
Okay, members, if you would go to A3, I'm trying to...
Okay. So...
No.
Nope, not okay.
What are you talking about? Which one? In what part of the council packet does it...
7A.
7A.
Right. Page 3. And that captures all three of these processes. That's why I'm going to reference us back to that.
Okay, so this is on staff memo, page 3.
Yes.
Got it. Okay.
Okay. So
next steps.
Next
is the
steps.
title.
And we've talked about a few of them quite a bit this morning, but one more time to reiterate, January 14th right now is the end of the 45-day public comment period. It closes on that date. January 24th, we're going to do our rulemaking hearing. That will be part of our regularly scheduled January council meeting. Now, beyond that, so from the January council meeting really through the April council meetings, and at this point we are tentatively holding 2 council meetings in April, that pretty much all of those meetings are going to be heavily focused on any presentations, any tasks, any discussions, any direction requests that we need to get from the council, we need to present to the council to keep us moving towards final production of the EIR, the Delta Plan, the rulemaking package.
So part of that will be under the winter 2012, respond to comments on the Delta Plan, comments received, both written and oral, and then comments on the rulemaking package, and then comments on the final draft Delta Plan itself.
Yes.
Okay, so what you're essentially, we're waiting until January 14th to get the comments. Then we're going to wait until whenever to receive the responses to the comments on the various elements. Then we're going to hold the hearings about all of that.
Yes.
That's the way I...
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, could I just ask, follow on your question? Mm-hmm. Cindy, again, kind of going back to some of my earlier comments, what would it do if we were to consider extending the comment period to January 24th and have it all closed at the same time we have the rule, again, different paths, but parallel? What does that do to the schedule? Because all we have is the general, and I think that's what Phil's question was as to what happens at the next meetings. But 10 days is meaningful. Does that add more days beyond the 10 because of other backup time, or is it just purely 10 more days that would have it open? My point on this is that to have at least one council meeting where there's notice not only about the rulemaking, again that's a separate element to us of the hearing on that, but also where folks could provide their final oral comments on the recirculated, and recognizing all the qualifiers we have put relative to content that's been out there for, in some cases, months, if not longer. Well, my question is, what would that do if there were 10 days added? Is it just simply 10 more days and the hearings get, or does it compounded by another month or 2? I need to have some understanding of that. So.
Okay, I'll take a stab at this. What purely logistical? If I'm looking at my dates, I'm going through the schedule. It pushes things out 10 days. Now, what it does do, and I have a feeling these gentlemen are going to chime in any second here about the very end of the process. That's where it gets a little...
Yeah, what we're trying to do at the end of the process, and we had touched upon this at the last meeting.
Trying to get to June 30th, is that what you're saying?
Well, it's not just June 30th. I think June 30th, the close of the fiscal year, it's important for the council to get its job done. We really have to adopt the Delta Plan. We have to secure funding for the implementation of the Delta Plan in the future. That, in my opinion, and Chris Knopf will probably back me up, that's very important that we get that done. One of the features of the process that we have to keep in mind is the effective date of the actual implementation of the regulations. So, again, putting the policies into play, covered actions, the potential appellate role, all that, it hinges upon the effective date of the regulations. Currently in law, there's a quarterly effective date scenario that was just placed into law this past session, whereby batches of state agency regulations that are filed with the Secretary of State take effect as a bunch on quarterly dates now. You remember in the past, it would just happen haphazardly. The business community said too hard to track, and the bill was passed. So now, if the OAL were to approve our regulations, get them over to Secretary of State between, I think, March 1st and the end of May, they wouldn't take effect until July 1st, absent an exception. There's an exception where you can apply to the Office of Administrative Law for good cause to have them take effect earlier. But again, that isn't within our control. That's an Office of Administrative Law approval. Who knows if they would. So again, we're looking at July 1st as the date these would probably go into effect. If you miss the deadline to get it over to Secretary of State, then you're looking at November 1st, September, well, whatever it is, another 3 months in any event. And so I think at least at the staff level, obviously this is your decision, that is really important, not only that we get the plan adopted as soon as we can, no later than the end of the fiscal year, but that the regulations take effect so we can start with a covered action process and start addressing the crisis in the Delta that the legislature and the governor told us that we have to do. So that's what we've been trying to work, behind the scenes to get this done as quickly as possible. So, adding another 10 days to the end of the process jeopardizes potentially when the regulations take effect. So I just want you to be aware of that.
No, that's the type of, yeah. I'm seeking that out, at least for
Absolutely.
my question. That's what I want to know. And so your schedule is so tight that 10 days?
Our schedule is very tight right now.
That
I think that the extra 10 days, again, this is my opinion, and it's your decision. The extra 10 days would potentially throw our schedule off. I think that with the close of the comment period on the 14th, from staff's perspective, what we're going to be doing then is trying to gather all the comments, what we call delineate them, put them into categories, and then start responding to them as soon as possible so then we can prepare an informative presentation for you to get you to the final date. That in the meantime, we also have to prepare for this January 24th hearing, which is a formal hearing where we have a court reporter. There'll be some relatively informal rules, but in any event, it still is a hearing, and we'll have to prep for that as well. And what we intend to do after the close of the period, on the 14th, as soon as practicable, is get the comment letters up on the webpage. So even on the CEQA comments, and this will take some time too. It took some time the last go-round, but we want to make sure, consistent with the transparent process, that we have all the CEQA comments on the recirculated document up. We want to make sure we have all the comments on the APA rulemaking stuff on our webpage. And so there's a whole bunch of things that we'll be doing behind the scenes. The schedule is extremely tight. Again, it's your decision, though.
Well, let me just maybe ask a question, and maybe kind of puts it back to the council, and I may be the only one that's even thinking in this way, but then would it potentially make sense for the council, again, is there a reason why we aren't meeting on the 10th of January, whenever the day would fall?
Yeah, I think that's right.
And again, that requires obviously people coming here or coming to the session, but to allow that opportunity, because then you keep your time schedule. There's work involved in putting an agenda together, but for the purpose of that focused piece of it, again, I think we have spent such a tremendous amount of time, and not only being transparent, but trying to do that outreach. And in light of some of the requests we're receiving from folks to extend, not necessarily coming to a meeting, they can do that in writing, and then we encourage that. So I guess I pose that too, as being a way then you don't throw the schedule off, but give an opportunity for folks to show up in this setting and make those comments, not just about the EIR, but obviously about the Delta plan, because that's what's being evaluated here, and it doesn't throw the schedule off in that respect. It does require additional work, and I'm not, ignoring that.
Let me,
yeah.
Mr. Natoli, let me make a suggestion
Okay.
to you. And I think we've done this once before in our process adopting the interim plan. What if we formed a subcommittee of this body to receive comments 2 or 3 days before the January 14th meeting? I don't know what the precise day would be. From folks, I think we're looking for folks who aren't going to do it in writing but want an opportunity close to the deadline to do it. And Mr. Stevens, I mentioned that to you, but reflect on that. And Ms. Garber, if you have any reaction to that, I'd like to hear it too.
Well, we in the past, we held, 7 EIR hearings statewide, up and down the state.
Right.
Not all of the members could attend, but most of the members attended some of the meetings.
Mm-hmm.
I think you and the vice chair attended most of those meetings. So it's something that we could do as well. And we could do that before the close of the comment period. It's, again,
Ms. Garber,
it takes, we would have to find a venue.
Well,
we
forget
would
the
need
details of
yeah.
where the meeting would be. I suspect it would be at the 989 building, and we reserve a room on all that. Randy? Pardon?
We're talking about just one extra meeting.
Right.
I think that's right. Ms. Garber, your reflection on this.
Other agencies do that. Some of those agencies don't have elected decision-making bodies. Some do. You could attend or not attend.
Yeah, that's a point. When Ms. Buchholz had us doing the early environmental work, one of the comments that floated around is staff could be designated to receive the comments. And we talked about that. Said that was more respectful of people if we were there to listen to the comments. Because of the timeline, at least my inclination is to set up in advance of the 14th meeting, an opportunity for people to come in, advertised opportunity, and having a subcommittee receive the comments is okay with me, and a subcommittee could be 2 or 3 people. Ms. Gray.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Would that suffice what you need done in terms of public
Yeah,
hearing?
I think it gives the opportunity, and again, I would be more than willing to participate in that subcommittee. I just think it's important, and we've come a long journey here, and
Right.
yeah, I think we've done that in the past. I think that worked pretty well. Allowed geographically for us to attend different areas. In this case, it would be one location, one meeting. And what if you had more than 3 of us that wanted to show up? Then
I think that we would notice it the
Okay.
same way that we did
We
before.
should-
We should notice it.
Yeah,
We
you-
should notice it.
Right.
Right.
You don't.
Oh, yeah.
And you don't have to set up a subcommittee. We'll just have a hearing, and
I'm fine.
whichever members can attend would
Well,
attend.
can I just make a suggestion? I think you probably want to either set it up as a subcommittee, unless more than 2 or 3 people want to attend. Don, do you have a preference on that?
well, no, I don't. Have preference. I certainly would.
Yeah, this is a
if I
hearing to
said-
receive
yeah.
comments, not take action.
That's
that's
right.
clear.
It's a listening session,
Okay,
basically.
it's a listening session. Well,
No.
I know a quorum is not
Absolutely
necessary.
But you might
All
get
right, let's do this.
It might be better to have a subcommittee and not have 4 members, so no one who's noticed thinks that we might take action.
Yeah, that's my instinct on the subcommittee. It allows you to have a body formed for one purpose. We're relatively sure of having members there. So, Mr. Natoli, with your concurrence, let me just phrase it this way: that the council is prepared, I don't know, within a short period of time prior to January 14th, and we'd have to look at the calendar and work out the dates, to hold a meeting to allow the presentation of verbal comments. No reason not to accept written comments as well, from any party who wishes to comment on any aspects of this. Mr. Stevens, I'm making this up. Any aspects, including the Delta Plan, the revised environmental impact report, supplemental environmental impact report, and the notice of proposed rulemaking. Is that?
That's an approach. Yeah,
we
can do it that way. The 24th is still going to be the actual rulemaking.
No,
hearing.
I understand that, and
so,
I'm not intending to substitute
No,
this for the 24th.
Sure. I just wanted to remind you of that fact. The 10th, we'll have a court reporter. We can take.
Yeah, my experience in these processes has been that there's always somebody who shows up to want to talk about what concerns them, which may or may not be what we have scheduled legally. So my instinct is schedule it for the 3 categories. Dawn, that's agreeable to you?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. I'd say a subcommittee of 3 people, and members, if you don't, I mean, I'm happy to do it. Dawn's happy to do it. We'll look at your schedules. Let us get the date first. Staff will get the date. Maybe after lunch you could return with a possible date. We could compare schedules. If not, we'd work it out by Monday, and I'd designate the 3rd person depending on availability of members on that. Is that clear enough? Okay. How about let's making that a motion if we could.
Okay, so moved.
Okay, moved by Mr. Natoli, second Ms. Gray. Discussion. Okay, starting with Mr. Nordhoff.
Nordhoff, aye.
Johnston, aye.
Gray, aye.
Fiorini, aye.
Eisenberg, aye.
Natoli, aye.
Good. Okay, 6-0 on that. And you're, Chris, you're going to work with the ladies to make sure that the form of the motion we just did is consistent with what we were talking about, but also in proper grammatical form. All right, and then if the staff has a chance to reflect on this and come back with a possible date, let's say come back with 2 dates, and we'll try to revise this again. Good idea. Thank you, Don.
Thanks.
Okay, Ms. Messer.
That is it.
That is it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
No, it's not.
No, it's
Oops.
I'm sorry.
Sorry
Mr.
about that.
Mr.
I
Nordhoff.
think the next steps is nice and informative because it is nice and broad. But are we going to get any more precise than putting seasons down when certain things are finished?
We will, and I think one of the things we've talked about is making sure that we at least get to the council members some more firm dates very, very, very soon about when some of the key activities. I know Chris had mentioned an informative presentation having to do with the comments and the response to comments. Right now, we're looking at the end of March for that, so we can certainly make sure that we get.
May I suggest also that council members take a look at the memo that's included in the packet on potential dates for future council meetings.
Mm-hmm.
We think we've worked out the first couple of months in staff's view, and correct me where that is. The very first. Yeah, I'm sorry. It's part of the cover staff. There's a memo from Angela D'Ambrosio dated December 4, and down at the bottom is a 2013 council meeting agenda. We think we're good, sort of, maybe kind of, for the January 24, 25, February 21, 22, tentative February 28 and March 1.
Mm-hmm.
Good probably for March 27, 28,
Mm-hmm.
and then all the rest from that point on are tentative until the very end of the year where we're positive because we're too far away to really say much else.
Well, and I think for April right now we have the 2 meetings. The first one.
Well, this memo marks 1 as tentative.
Okay.
And,
Sorry, I can't find it in all of
well,
the
but
paperwork
look,
here.
Mr. Nordhoff's point is a fair one. We're close enough in time to all of this. We ought to start putting more firm dates to precise hearing times and doing that fairly rapidly.
Well, I'm thinking not so much of hearing times, but of actual completion activities. I mean, it sounds like we've got a hard stop by the end of June.
Yep.
We ought to put it down here.
I agree.
Okay. I will
Okay.
do that.
Any council objection to that, Ms. Gray?
Objection. Would it be helpful to also put exactly what these dates mean? I mean, what we're actually going to do on those particular dates?
Probably what you're going to wind up doing is taking some of the charts of activities and projections that were in this memo and updating it, just as we did with after the last meeting. You recall, after we made some date changes, you went back and on Friday, posted a more clearly stated revised schedule for the Delta Plan activities. It's that kind of stuff that gets wide distribution, is very understandable, and would be helpful here.
Yeah, I think what I'll do is take this, and get it a little bit more specific and some
Yeah,
firmer
I mean,
dates.
Mr. Nordhoff's point is a fair one. What's our end date? Put it in print. Okay? All right. Mr. Knopf, I believe, okay, are there any other questions, Gwen? Did you? Okay. All right. We do have, I'm sorry, we have people who want to talk. Ladies, bring the blue forms up if you would, please.